let me ask you this. How have you, are you financially supported now full-time by your work with Scientology? Did you structure it as a nonprofit? And how have you dealt with the financial aspects of becoming financially sustainable in what you do?
No, I just have my own little company. It's called Graphics Works, and I do graphic work and video work and stuff for people. I've done that.
Not related to Scientology.
Not related to Scientology.
Okay.
Locally here in Denver, I've done some video work for people, but for the most part, I mean, the vast bulk of how I'm making my living and making my life go these days is what I do here. And I want to do more of it. I love my job. I have found a job that is exactly what I want to be doing. So I've put everything into it, and I put all my effort and all my time and effort and energy into this. I've had to do a side job here and there sometimes, a little side hustle here, a little side hustle there, but for the most part, I've been able to make it go. I need to stress to anybody out there that if you want to make money, being an activist ain't how to do it. You know, this is no get rich quick scheme. This has been, being on YouTube is a marathon, not a sprint. It has taken me years to build up my channel just to the little tiny thing that I have now. And I want to keep it going. And so far it's been going, and that's been wonderful for me. But it's, this is barely keeping a roof over my head.
Oh, okay. So and you could just say, I can't talk about it. So I'm going to ask questions, but you tell me, where does your revenue come from?
YouTube, ad revenue, Patreon. Patreon has been amazing. There's no way I'd ever been able to do this without Patreon. YouTube ad money is the sort of thing that buys the groceries and stuff, but Patreon is actually what keeps the roof over my head. And that the support from people has been mind-blowing. It has been so wonderful. So that I get individual donations. I have royalties, of course, from my book. I mean, this is all public knowledge and public records and stuff. Nothing hidden about any of this. I don't have hidden benefactors or donors or anything. It's all right there. There's nobody paying me to do this. There's nobody, big pharma. I'm still waiting for my check. The Church of Scientology loves to tell its critics or its members that, people like me are paid by big pharma, or big psych or something, no, there's no checks coming in from those guys. So it's
mostly from YouTube ad revenue and your Patreon page.
That's right.
Why did you not set up a nonprofit? I'm just curious.
It didn't even occur to me to set up a nonprofit. Why would I?
Well, when I started Mormon Stories, and I was getting my PhD in psychology, I had done Mormon Stories for about 4 or 5 years. I was staring at having to take a $15 an hour job as a grad student, and I had to support my family of 4, and my wife didn't work outside the home. And so I thought, I'll start a nonprofit, and I'll ask people to donate to the nonprofit, and they'll get tax deductions if they donate. And what I'll do is it won't just be about me. It'll be about, let's have a cause, which is to support people in their transition and to build resources and community and support for people who leave. And so by creating a mission that people could be part of, and by allowing people to get a tax deduction from their donations, the thinking was that would make it more sustainable. And that's how Mormon Stories works now. Mormon Stories works under a nonprofit called the Open Stories Foundation. We receive annual donations from donors. They get a tax deduction. They get to feel like they're part of making a difference. And the donations go towards supporting the podcast, the YouTube channel, and all the other efforts that we do. So that's why we did a nonprofit.
Wow. I wish I had known about that kind of model setup, because it didn't even occur to me to do anything like that. I am about as far from business savvy as you're going to find. I incorporated my little, S Corp, and I have an accountant that I pay a little tiny bit to do all the tax work, because I don't know anything about that stuff. 27 years in Scientology. Well, I didn't pay taxes that whole time. I was, filing at 99 EZ, right? I mean, when you're making $45 a week, you're not in a high income tax bracket. But that means my Social Security is kind of screwed too. So anybody who thinks I got off easy, not quite.
Right.
I am not savvy in any of that stuff, and that's why I didn't do that.
Well,
and
I'm not either. I'm
and the
not either.
idea of biting off a chunk that big and having a company and it's kind of beyond my.
Yeah. So the downsides of doing a nonprofit have been, number one, the complexities of a nonprofit are that it has to have a board of directors, and it has to be, whoever's getting income, including myself, the decisions around income have to be made by an independent board or body that isn't personally benefiting. And so, ultimately, I don't control the Open Stories Foundation. It's the board of directors that controls. Now, I'm on the board of directors, but in theory, I could be kicked off of my own organization, and whatever I make is set by that independent board. And whatever income I make is a matter of public scrutiny, and it should be. And so I'm not ashamed of that. But there are complexities with the nonprofit, because again, if the church wanted to hurt me, they could support someone to become my close friend, so that I'd put them on the board of directors, and then all of a sudden I see my board of directors destroying the nonprofit and kicking me off. And we've come close to that, not necessarily because of the church, but just because of how difficult it can be to manage a nonprofit and to manage personalities and a board and staff, etc. So it's interesting. You just go for profit. You just go for profit and you avoid all that.
Yeah, I do. And I was on the board of directors of a nonprofit here in town, the Secular Hub, for the last 2 years. I just got off that this year, a couple months ago. And yeah, it's work, man. It's a whole lot of work. And that was all volunteer. That was strictly volunteer work on my part. I couldn't even imagine bringing all that into my own life.
So you don't make public what your annual income is that right?
No.
Okay.
No. But I can tell you that I'm not in a great income bracket. I mean, I don't think it's anybody's business exactly how much I'm making, but I can tell you that I cannot afford health insurance. I cannot afford most of anything. And I'm just barely making it work here, but I'm making it work because this is work that is meaningful to me. It is work that I know is meaningful for other people, and it's necessary, and somebody needs to do this. So.
Well, listen, Chris Shelton, you and I at some point need to get together, have dinner, talk, because I'm not, this isn't me bragging, but I'm doing better than the way you describe.
Yeah.
I have a YouTube channel. I compared my YouTube channel with yours and Lloyd Evans's. He's the king, you're second, and I'm third. and there are other cults that we probably, other unhealthy organizations / ex-church / cult sort of things that there are other people out there. But if I can do anything to help you be more, I think this is the thing. There are a lot of wonderful donors and supporters that and of course I've been doing this for 14 years, right? So I have a little bit of a head start on you. But there are so many people who are willing to support me to the point where, for the first 5 or 10 years, I was no health insurance, sacrificing. But right now I'm in a decent position. And I think that people in our position should be financially taken care of. For heaven's sakes, the Mormon prophet and apostles and general authorities, they're all pulling down 6 figures, $200,000-$300,000 a year, plus with the lifelong pension. And that's what we're up against. Why should we be paupers without, like my kids got in a car wreck. They were driving such an unsafe car that they almost died in a car wreck because the airbag didn't deploy when they got in an accident. Like my kids needed mental health services for years, and I wasn't able to give it to them because I was volunteering my time to building Mormon Stories, the Open Stories Foundation, becoming a psychologist, so my own family couldn't get mental health services. It is not right that people in our station should be living like paupers, depriving ourselves of just basic financial needs and mental health services needs when we're fighting organizations with billions of dollars and tens of thousands of staff members. And so I want you to be taken care of better. I want Lloyd Evans to be taken care of better. I want Tova Mirvis and Amber Score to be taken care of better. And so listen, dude, if you want to come to Salt Lake, or I'll come to freaking Denver, if I can help you have a more successful organization so that you aren't living like a pauper and you could do this for longer, we all benefit from that. And ex-Scientologists benefit from that. And effing ex-Scientologists and ex-Mormons need to stop torpedoing and harming fellow ex-Mormons and ex-Scientologists because people like us can go just as quick as we come. And then who's left to kind of help other people, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, amen, man. I'll just say one other thing about this, just since we are kind of talking about this right now. This is nothing I never talk about, but since it came up, it's worth mentioning that there is a very, very strange idea in the public at large that activists are supposed to be paupers, or supposed to be broke, or supposed to live like Gandhi or something. And like you said, we're taking on multi-billion-dollar corporations, and we're supposed to live the life of an ascetic in order to have the moral high ground or something. It's very, very strange. I cannot afford health insurance, and I have health issues. My wife has health issues. So it's not a joke. I mean, this is the sort of thing that you're trying to get through life, and you're trying to do good work, and you're trying to help people. But not everybody, actually, I'm going to not talk in generalities here, okay? Some people carp at you because you say, I've got a Patreon account. Would you be willing to help me out? My content is free. It's always been free. But if you want to help me out, that would be great. How dare you? How dare you ask for money? I mean, really, I really don't get where these people get off. They think that this work is easy to do. They think it's no big deal to set up a studio, set up an account, set up cameras, set up lights, do all this work, write this stuff, produce it. YouTubers just have a nothing job. I mean, man, it can sometimes be very trying dealing with some of that.
And don't also underestimate, and again, I'm venting now, but I'm glad we're connecting on this.
Yeah.
The emotional burden of trying to take on the harm of an organization that's harming so many people. And then you start hearing from all the people being harmed, and you're wearing all that in addition. And then you're basing your whole life and reputation down this road where you're making tens of thousands of enemies of people with power and influence, where it could really influence whether you're ever able to have a decent job again, now that your public persona is so out there in such a controversial way. You're carrying all of that.
That's right. And
it affects your relationship with your spouse, with your kids, if you have them. Dad, why are you, my friends don't like me. My friends don't want to be around me. I'm having a hard time in this or that way because you're a public figure, not to mention people noticing you. Like, there are all sorts of ways that this job is emotionally and psychologically sometimes excruciating and taxing.
Very much so. Very much so. I said, that, when you get declared earlier, that it was like a monkey off my back, right? But, and that's all true. I mean, I'm not lying about that. That actually happened. But you don't really understand the monkey that lives on your back as an activist, And I don't know. I guess I've never talked about this before because I didn't want to come across like I was some big plea for sympathy. But this is not an easy job. It's taxing. It's taxing hearing about what we have to hear about. I would not stop. I'm not going to stop. But, some of the emails that I get that people never see, some of the communications I have, some of the phone calls I have with people just trying to help them out. I mean, that's kind of the other thing is, I'm not a professional. I'm not a licensed counselor. When people call me and ask for help, I can't charge them for that, or at least if I could, I guess. But, it's not like I've got anyway, it's just there's a lot of work that goes on in what we do that people don't see. Just put it that way. I don't want to come across like it's poor me. This is the life I chose. But this is a lot more work than I think most people think.
Yeah. And it's also beautiful work. And And we do get positively recognized, and people are grateful.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things I hate about it is we're white, cis, heterosexual, straight males, and everybody's like, you're repeating the patriarchy, and
Yeah.
well, what am I supposed to do? Not help out because I just happen to be a white, straight, cis male? Like, I want other ex-Mormon activists or post-Mormon activists to be people of color, women, non-heterosexual, non-cisgender. Like, I want that. But do I need to go away to make room for that? Or is there a way for me to succeed and them succeed? Because in the end, it's not about any of that. It's just about how many people can be helped.
Exactly. And that's why I don't even go there with all that stuff. I just look, man, everybody's got a voice, use it, and if you can put stuff out there that people want to know, that they need to hear, that they need to be educated by, that will help them, they will listen to you.
Yeah.
I didn't enter into this with the idea that I was one day going to be full-time doing this. That's not how this happened. This all grew organically.
Well, my dream is to have an annual summit for ex-religious people that everyone can go to. I know Freedom from Religion Foundation, but the thing is, it's not just about that. And that's what Thrive is about, by the way. It's not just about being ex-religious. It's about finding a healthy, happy life, not something to move away from, but something to move to. But wouldn't it be great if every year, me and you and Lloyd and Amber and Tova and Stephen Hassan and all the people involved in this stuff, we could get together to share ideas, to support each other, to share tips and tricks on how we've all been able to make a difference within our respective organizations and with our people, and where we can help all of our people find the best, most effective ways to heal and grow and thrive beyond the religious tradition that they're in or that they just left, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The closest thing I've found to that in my own experience so far has been working I've spoken once, and I've gone to one meeting of the International Cultic Studies Association. They're a group of people who are kind of working in that direction, but it's been interesting. Also, I have to say, one of the things.
But just so I can say that, like the word cult is a turnoff. Like,
oh no, I get that. No, I totally get that.
It's a negative identity, and I'm sure that group does good things. I've subscribed to their email list, but I just think you're going to limit the ability you're able to reach people if you're using the word cults as part of your name or description or the things you do. And I'm not saying you're arguing that. I'm just giving my reaction to the problem with that organization being what I'm talking about.
Totally. I totally get that. Get that. I'm just talking from my own experience. I'm more than happy to work with other folks too. But I wanted to comment on something relevant to the entire discussion we've had in terms of recovery, which is that I've also been a bit reticent to get involved with much of any other groups. And that's only something I came to realize in the last year or so has been something I've been gun shy about. I didn't realize consciously that I've been avoiding being part of groups.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Because there's trust issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Like, not just a couple. Right?
Totally.
And, being on this board of the local, the secular hub was an eye-opening experience that way. There were good and bad, right? There is in any group. Perfectly happy to have put my time in there, to have contributed to that, and I love that group. So I'm not bad-mouthing it in any way, but I had my own issues to get over, and I still find now that once that kind of came into my consciousness as that's what's happening. It's still been a struggle to want to associate myself with groups, Yeah,
because once bitten, twice shy, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. And that, I think, is also something that if it's happening with me, I can't be the only person, right, that happens with. So I think that might be one of the other hurdles we have to climb with people or get people over.
For sure, because who wants to get out of one cult and then join some other personality cult where women are mistreated or children are abused or people are being fleeced financially? or you're just spending your time building up someone else's empire. Like nobody wants that, right?
Exactly.
And so
that's been a struggle.
Yeah. And yeah. Well, my heart goes out to you for how hard it is. And I'm sincere in my offer, Chris. If I can teach you what I've done to be able to be, I feel like I make a living commensurate with my education experience and background now. And I wasn't doing bad before I left Microsoft. So now that I feel like I'm in that place, dude, if I can help you, that is a sincere, open invitation. All right.
Awesome, man. I am sure we will be in touch.
Not that you need my help. Okay. So can you talk about how effective you've been? Have you helped people? Have you helped people out of Scientology, or have you helped people not go to Scientology, not become members, or have you helped people who have left get to a healthy place? Talk a bit about what you've been able to tap into about the effectiveness of your work.
Yes, absolutely. I have. I know this through emails and phone calls. So people tell me this. I'm not asking them or soliciting them to tell me how I've helped them. I've had this happen many, many, many times. At this point, probably hundreds of times. Family members of Scientologists have sought out advice from me, or friends of Scientologists, or friends and family of other cults. Actually, quite a few of them have reached out to me. I've advised people on how to engage in intervention type work, or how to talk to people who are in these groups, how to help them when they get out to recover from it, what to do, how to do it. It's not like there's a basic roadmap. It's not a one size fits all sort of thing. It's very, very context specific in helping an individual out of one of these things. But I have been able to contribute to that. I was part of one intervention that was kind of fun. And interesting, very, very educational experience for me.
But Mormons don't have interventions, so we don't even really know what that means. What does that mean?
Oh, I'm talking about like a cult intervention where literally a family will reach out to a person to get them to help intercede on their behalf with a person who's in a destructive cult to basically help talk them out of it. And by talking them out of it, what it really means is listening a lot and giving them information that they need at their level, not giving them the information you want to give them, but giving them, finding out where they're at, what their belief is based on, and kind of deconstructing or breaking it down with the truth. It's not about, forcing somebody or, lying to them or, throwing them in the back of a van or some kind of bullshit like that. That's the kind of crap that died in the 80s. That's why I don't use the word deprogram anymore, because it's too connected with all of that. It's not a good word to use for purposes of what it means to get somebody out of a cult situation. So anyway, I've done a lot of that work. And according to what people have told me, it's been very successful. And I've been quite proud of that work. Former Sea Org members have reached out to me. I've met with them in person. I've talked on the phone with them about, how to process what happened and how to help move on, reestablish a life. There is, of course, this wonderful thing we have in the Ex Scientology world, which is the Aftermath Foundation, which was established specifically to help former Scientologists who have just come out get themselves back on the road, get their feet on the ground. I have referred people to them. I've worked with them. I'm not part of the Aftermath Foundation, but I'm definitely an ally of that group. And so so it's been very, that's been the reward part. That's been the satisfying part. That's the job satisfaction part, my work is actually helping people, And it really surprises me, even now, how many different groups will talk to me about that. Individuals will reach out and tell me how, this group, that group, the other group. I mean, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian cults, the family, 12 tribes, like all of these groups, and other ones that don't even have any names because they're just some religious sect somewhere, some tiny little group. From the big ones to the small ones, the help is the same. And that's what I've done.
So I'm just looking at the Aftermath Foundation. It's the aftermathfoundation.org. Looks like Mike Rinder's on that board.
Yep.
and it's just an organization dedicated to helping people leave Scientology.
People.
Huh?
Well, it's about helping them get their feet on the ground once they have left.
Okay.
The Aftermath Foundation does not do interventions.
Yeah.
What they do is if somebody comes out, or if they're afraid to come out and they're reaching for help because they don't know what to do, they don't know where they would go, they don't know what job they would have, their family would disconnect from them. This is a reason why people stay in these groups. So the Aftermath Foundation is there and has solicited donations to be able to grant them to people so that they can get a job, get a house, get a car, get a place to live, that stuff. So
one of our listeners, Allie, is asking, do interventions really work? Seems like their shelf would need to be cracking. And I have a second kind of question for Mormons. Would a Mormon intervention even make sense? And it's because, and I can say that as emotionally devastating as it is to leave Mormonism, Scientology and I think Orthodox Judaism are next level devastation, because there is the worst thing we have are kind of, let's just say, a church employee or a church education system person, somebody who is an educator, professional educator for the church. If they want to leave and they're in their 30s and they have a young family, I can see that as being devastating. But it's curious to me that we have so much in common as churches, but I've literally never heard of intervention as being a thing in the Mormon context. Stephen Hassan talks about it, the Moonies and Jehovah's Witness and Scientology, but in Mormonism, it's not even a thing. And so I'm just trying to wonder, should it be a thing, or is Mormonism nice enough to where it really doesn't fit, and would it work? Or would it, my opinion would be, if you try to do an intervention with a Mormon, you would just create backlash and they would want to hold tighter to Mormonism, because most of the time they've got a good job or a decent job and they're earning a good living. And it's not like they're being held in a jail, or like 40 years have been committed to the church, so they couldn't even get a job. Now it might be hard to get a job.
No, and that's all understandable. Usually interventions are started by family members.
Yeah.
And they're usually started with cause, right? The person is too deep involved. They've gone extreme for some reason. Doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes families are also try to make interventions happen in situations where the person is literally perfectly happy, not being abused, and there's no problems. Hard to say that would happen in Scientology, because it's such a rapacious, they just want to take all your money all the time.
Yeah.
But, I could see it happening with a Mormon, but it's, an intervention it's done right. It really just looks like a conversation. I mean, it's, you got to get the person's agreement to be there and be part of what's happening. It's not something you force on somebody. And that's part of the methodology of doing it, is you got to, there's a little bit of deception involved, usually at the beginning, in terms of getting them to agree to have a conversation. Because they don't, because you're going to present them with information that at the beginning they don't want to hear. So you've got to gradually get them to it. So in that sense, there's a strategy to it, but the tactic is really just to try to have a conversation with the person and present them with the information that they don't have. And when you have a situation where a person is suffering from lack of informed consent about what they're actually involved in, and then they've gone into a cultic mindset where it's us versus them, and they're actually like, if you dare criticize my group in any way, then down come the shields. Then there's need to be somewhat surreptitious about how you approach the conversation. But at the end of the day, that's really just a conversation with them. So does it work? Yeah, it works. Doesn't work all the time.
Right.
It depends on the person who's doing it. It depends on the family and how much they cooperate with the whole thing. Because sometimes, most of the time, families are the ones who derail it. So, it's a mixed bag. But yes, they do work.
In Mormonism, we've got something a little bit different. We don't always have this hard shunning that Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientologists do. Now, we do have excommunication, but that's more and more rare. What we have is more of this soft situation where either you're too afraid to tell your parents and siblings or church leaders, and so you just quietly disappear, or you go into yourself and you're just miserable and sad and depressed and dejected, or you just disappear and hide who you are, or you try and talk to your parents or siblings, and normally they just sort of become petrified about you and scared about you. They don't necessarily kick you out of the family, although that does happen, but it's more they'll take you out of the text string. They won't invite you to the same parties. They'll talk about you behind your back. They won't let their kids be alone with you. And you're still in the family. You're just kind of like that dangerous child or sibling or cousin that you want to keep your distance from socially and emotionally. And you just never want to ever talk to about religious stuff. And so that just is cut off. That's more, it's kind of more, yeah, Ivana just called it passive aggressive shunning. And that's
Yes.
what Mormonism is like.
And there are Scientologists, make no mistake. That happens in every one of these groups. Sometimes families know that the policy of the group is to disconnect, and they don't want to do that with their own family members. So instead, they practice the passive aggressive version of the shunning, and hope that sort of tough love approach or something will be enough to shake the person to get them back in the fold. But they don't want to do a full disconnect, so they won't do that or make a big, huge, bigger issue out of it than that.
Yeah, I love it. That's so fascinating, and that's where we are. Okay, so you feel like you've made a big difference. I mean, and this is interesting because a lot of my listeners listen to you, and so for years, people have been telling me to kind of get you on Mormon Stories. But I also have ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Scientologists, ex-Baptists, ex-Catholics, ex-Muslims, ex-Jews listening to Mormon Stories. So part of the work we do is in helping people make sense of and leave other, harmful religious traditions that aren't our own. Is that right?
Absolutely, because one of the best, I think we mentioned earlier in the show here that, one of the best ways to get somebody out of a group is educate them about a different group. And so that's where that's come from. And it's been heartening for me, when I get contacted by somebody who was a Jehovah's Witness. This morning, a woman reached out to me on Twitter and said that through my work, I have educated her in how to talk about the fact that she was in a destructive relationship, an abusive relationship. And because she now has the words, she now has the ability to see it for what it was and get past that and recover from it. And I was like, God damn, that's the kind of stuff that makes my day. That's exactly what we're trying to do. So I'm all about getting those kind of results.
Yeah. So that's a fun thing that we're kind of helping in the work that we do, that Lloyd Shelton does, that you do, that others do, Leah Remini. We're helping across religious traditions, and I think that's really important.
That's right.
Okay. Excellent. And one thing that's just mind-blowing is that there's no real big YouTube presence within post-Mormonism right now. Zelf on the Shelf has done a great job. We love them. And Mormon Stories has a semi-successful YouTube channel. But, we have Brother Jake, who's ending what he's doing. And, of course, we have Jonathan Streeter, who does great work as Thinker of Thoughts. But I think the YouTube world is still largely untapped in post-Mormonism and is a real opportunity. Oh, and I don't want to forget my friends Sean and Crystal Escobar with Mormon Enlightenment. They're trying to make a splash there, but that's
cool.
An interesting opportunity that is yet to be uncovered.
Cool. Yeah.
So what else? So what else can we talk about, Chris? What are we?
I have definitely told my whole story here. Were there any other questions people had?
I've been Audrey just wrote, I've thoroughly enjoyed this series of discussions between you two. I can ask listeners really quick to ask questions.
We might go toward wrapping up at this point, and if we don't have any other burning questions.
Yeah. So you haven't been doing mental health work or life coaching work. Is that right?
I have not. You mean on other people?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have not. I have given advice. I have given some guidelines and direction out of the education that I have, but I do not pretend to be a psychotherapist or a recovery expert, counselor, or whatever. I avoid words like that in connection with me because I don't have any letters after my name. I had contemplated going back to school at one point, but it's ridiculously expensive and time consuming in the United States to try to do any of that. So I just figured my mission would best be served by continuing to do what I do here. So I'm, what's the word? What is self-taught, basically, right?
Yeah, but I mean, this is potentially an opportunity. I went back and got my legit clinical and counseling psychology PhD.
Yeah.
Because I just realized how many people needed my help. But it has become an option for me to support myself in my work. Right now, my coaching practice is very small, and I'm not looking to grow it right now because I think the biggest impact I can make is one-to-many, not one-to-one, although I love the coaching work that I've done. But we need healers. Mormonism needs, that's why I partner with Natasha Helfer Parker and Symmetry Solutions and the Mormon Mental Health Association. There needs to be this host of experts you can call it religious PTSD, you can call it religious transitions, you can call it leaving religions, but just tens of thousands of Mormons every year in marriage therapy, sex therapy, mental health, LGBT, coaching and therapy. There's this phenomenal need for those types of services when people are coming out of these religious traditions.
Big time. Huge. I'm doing a podcast tonight about that. I'm doing a live stream with a couple other former religious folks. So yeah, there's a huge need for that. Like I said, I do what I can. I just try to be careful to let people know that I'm not like a licensed trained professional, right? I'm more than happy to advise and help people in any way I can. It's a little tricky because since I'm not a trained professional, I feel a little like, well, I'm investing a lot of my time in this too. And so it's a little bit tricky as to where to draw lines, I guess. But I'm just trying to do the best I can.
That's awesome. So is there like an equivalent to the Mormon Mental Health Association, the Ex Scientologist Mental Health Association, where ex Scientologists can go to find therapists that are competent culturally, therapists or coaches that are culturally competent in helping them find health and healing after Scientology?
Well, that has been the toughest challenge, actually. One of the hugest challenges for us, because psychologists in general do not understand destructive cults and do not understand undue influence or coercive persuasion the way that they really need to in order to counsel people coming out of situations where they've experienced that to a level way beyond what your run-of-the-mill regular person is going to encounter in their day-to-day life. This is being worked on very, very actively by a few key psychologists and cult recovery specialists who are psychologists or who are sociologists and can put the professional papers out there and do the talks and the briefings and stuff to when the psychiatrists and psychologists get together. There's a lot of work to do on this, though. But this is where ICSA comes in as a useful component because at least they have resources listed on their site about cult psychologists or therapists who do know what they're talking about when it comes to cults. And so there are some resources out there. There's Rachel Bernstein out in LA. There's Alexandra Stein out in UK. I think she's still practicing. There's Steve Hassan. There's people around who do understand how this works.
And then is there some sort of annual ex-Scientologist convention or meetup or, are there Facebook groups? How do ex-Scientologists get to know each other, connect with each other, and support each other?
Mainly through Facebook groups, online activity. We have had meetups in person. I went out to Philadelphia last year and met up with a bunch of former second-gen Scientologists. We're a little sort of clique of people who get together. So the groups sort of form up organically. There's various Facebook groups for this. Of course, sometimes We're on other social media platforms, but I think Facebook is where I've tended to congregate. And there is that Ex Scientology message board. There's just ways people find one another online through this. There's not any one single best place to go. I guess if I were looking to land anywhere, I would look on one of the Leah Remini support pages at this point, because those are the largest groups of people who are going to understand the Scientology experience. And there's mostly non-Scientologists on those groups, but at least they understand the experience because they are supporters of Leah's show.
Well, what we did, we created this site called Mormon Spec. What we did is we created, like, I did this with a colleague in 2011. We created like 100 Facebook groups. It's like Houston Mormon Stories, Salt Lake Mormon Stories, Logan Mormon Stories, London Mormon Stories. Then we created and we encouraged everyone to find a local Facebook group in their area or a meetup group of progressive and post-Mormons. And then we put together on a website called Mormon Spectrum this global map where we registered each Facebook group with a geographic location. So wherever you lived, you could go to that global map at mormonspectrum.org/map, and you could find the local Facebook group that was there for where you were living. And we're doing that with Thrive now too. We've got these Thrive groups. You can go to thrivebeyondmormonism.com. There's a map there, and you can find a local Thrive support group to help you process leaving Mormonism or leaving Mormon orthodoxy. And so this idea of local Facebook groups or meetup groups combined with a global app and a global brand name that can drive people to the local communities has been a really important way that we've been able to grow our ecosystem. And it sounds like
great.
Scientology hasn't done that yet.
No, we haven't done anything like that. We do not have, we don't have anything like that.
It's amazing. And I'm just saying, like, one of the things I'm proud about Mormonism's for, I think we're leaders in some ways on the internet of ex-religion or progressive religious activism. And I just really want every secret that we've learned as ex-Mormons, progressive Mormons, post-Mormons to be shared with Scientologists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Jews, Orthodox Jews, Muslims, Baptists, evangelicals, because there's a way to be super effective that really makes a huge difference. And the church, one of the things that's been so meaningful to me is to see just in the past year or 5 how much our church, Mormonism, has changed from being a barbaric cult-like organization to being more open with its information, more tolerant of LGBT people, more affirming of women, more honest about its history and its past, more compassionate and tolerant towards thinkers and doubters and scientifically, skeptically minded folks. And I just think if it's not this global annual summit for ex-religious people, man, we should have a global or a semi-annual think tank where those of us trying to make an impact in our respective communities can get together and share best practices so that this rising tide can lift all ships, not just the Mormon ship. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I don't disagree with you at all. And
so would you attend if I did a global summit for prominent activists in ex-religious organizations? Would you attend?
Yeah, of course I would.
All right. Well, I know you're skeptic about joining things, so I get that.
I didn't say I'd join. I said I'd attend.
Okay, that's cool. All right. Let's see. Other things that people are asking. Someone's asking if you've ever met, Tom Cruise or John Travolta or any of the famous ex-Scientologists.
Yes, I have. I met John Travolta a couple times. I met his wife, Kelly, when they were first meeting, actually, before they got married out in Santa Barbara. I never managed to meet Tom Cruise. I was within 100 feet of the guy a couple times.
Oh, so you've been in the same room with him.
What?
You've been in the same room with him.
No, I wasn't in the same room. I was outside the room.
Oh, got it.
I knew that he was there, right?
Got it. Okay.
And he gave a couple speeches a couple times, and I just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah. I've met other Scientology celebrities. Some of the names you'd recognize, some you wouldn't. They're just people, at the end of the day.
Interesting.
Yeah. Tom Cruise is a complete narcissistic dick, though. I mean, to be super, super, super clear, Tom Cruise is all about Tom Cruise, and he really doesn't care about anybody else. And he puts on probably, his acting skills actually are utilized more off screen than they are on screen.
Wow.
Yeah, he is not a good person. John Travolta is a genuinely nice person. I've met him. He had no reason to be nice to me, and he was totally nice. He's sincere. He truly believes in Scientology. So does Tom Cruise. But I believe John Travolta is still in because of his wife. Tom Cruise is a fanatic. He's never going to leave Scientology.
Okay.
And I'd be more than happy, by the way, to be proven wrong about that. Okay. I'm not on some I have to be right about that. If Tom Cruise left Scientology tomorrow, I'd be at the front of the line saying, good for you. But I don't see that ever happening.
Got it.
Yeah.
What is the state of Scientology now? Like when you watch The End of Going Clear, you get the sense that buildings are more and more empty, membership is dwindling, but financial assets are growing. In the Mormon church, you get that same sense that the growth is tapering off. We're becoming flat. We're losing people in the United States in droves. And that in a very, very, very soon, the church is actually going to be declining in real membership, with the only asterisks with the exception of however many third world people in Africa and Latin America they can get to join. But in, Europe and developed Asia and in the United States and Canada, the church is in a free fall, and it's hemorrhaging. And so it's scrambling to make changes. What's the modern state of Scientology by your best estimation?
Similar, actually, in terms of the real estate valuation versus the membership, right? Membership decreasing, real estate valuation growing alarmingly. They literally just bought out half of downtown Clearwater, for example. But yeah, the membership is dwindling. Scientology is primarily an American religion, and it is trying to survive by getting members in from Taiwan and Russia and other countries, other third world countries. So that's a problem for them. But they don't have any shortage of money. And David Miscavige doesn't particularly care about getting new members in so long as he can maintain his lifestyle and keep the money coming in. And there are enough Scientology whales to make that happen. So, so it's shrinking. It's, we're talking about 30,000 people worldwide. That's how many Scientologists there are, roughly. Somewhere between 20 and 40,000 people. So I'll put it at 30. There's about 10,000 at most at this point. These numbers were actually accurate like 7 or 8 years ago. I believe they are less now, but I still use them as a because I'm being conservative. It's about 30,000 Scientologists around the world. There's about 10,000 of them who work in the Sea Org or as staff members at the local churches. So that gives you about 20,000 public Scientologists. So this is not a big group. It's never been a big group, and the membership is shrinking.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But you just said they bought. This is huge. The parallels are just continue to shock me. You just said they bought out a huge portion of Clearwater. Mm-hmm. The Mormon Church is buying up huge parts of Salt Lake City, but also they're massively investing in commercial malls. They built like a $2 billion mall. They're investing in high-rise, residential living sort of things, big subdivision developments, and they're becoming really a huge corporation that's main job is to protect and enhance its financial assets. So is Scientology becoming more and more like a real estate wealth management corporation?
That's exactly what it's doing. And one of the things behind, I think, both of these moves is the decreasing membership. The people at the church leadership know more than any of us what their census figures are. Scientology keeps, decent enough records that they're going to know where they're at in terms of membership numbers. And I believe that that part of the motivation for this, both with Mormons and with Scientology, are to centralize bases that will never, ever close down, that are unassailable. Right? When you own Clearwater, Florida, which Scientology is well on its way to doing right now, and you stack the board, the city. They're trying to get. They've got the development, I think it's the development board is almost all Scientologists, and the city council, I'm really surprised that there are not any Scientologists there. I'm sure in the future there will be. And the effort has been to just own the place, and they will do that because that's a preservation move for them. And in addition to it's got, there's other nefarious reasons to do that kind of thing. But the main reason is a survival move, because if you own that whole town and you own all that real estate property, like that retail property, which Scientology now owns, they're the landlords on that. So they can bring in, businesses, and they're just making pure profit off the existence of those companies or businesses that are operating there. And when they own enough territory that can be its own income stream for the church, that replaces the donations that they're losing from their dwindling membership. So I think that's part of the reason for that. And I think that's part of the reason for it with the Mormons too. Mormons don't just own a little town of Clearwater or a bunch of property in LA. They got a whole state to play with.
Well, we have an entire state, but we own 2% of the land in Florida?
I did not know that. 2%.
The Mormon Church owns
Damn.
2% of Florida.
Damn, man. See, these guys are farther along on these agendas than I think most of us realize. I did not know that they own that much. The thing with Clearwater just came out this week. This was a bombshell report. This was investigative journalism that brought this out. This wasn't the Church of Scientology being at all transparent about what they're doing. So we can only wonder what other properties Scientology owns that nobody has a clue about. We know that there's a good chunk of the Los Angeles area that is owned by Scientology. So who knows what other properties they're buying in other places around the world.
Yeah. And same with our church. That's why I say, $500 billion. That's what the Mormon Church is worth, because
they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, they're not.
Not with $500 billion in assets. No way.
So, what one of my listeners asked, what advice do you give someone leaving a cult in terms of having a healthy, smooth as possible, a healthy, smooth transition, and how to end up in a healthy, happy place?
Education. I cannot stress education enough. It has been my life saver. And I have talked to many, many counselors and therapists about this, and they all agree with me on this point that education is crucial. If you come out of one of these groups and you don't break down or deconstruct for yourself what happened to you and why and how it happened to you, you are 1,000% susceptible to having it happen to you again. And education is the only way I know of to get on top of that. And by education, I mean education on cults, on undue influence, on thought reform. There's not tons and tons of literature you got to get through on this either. A few books and you'll understand how it all works. Hassan's work, Janja Lalich's work, the seminal work, of course. Where is it there? Yeah, Robert J. Lifton's work, right? Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. Kind of a hard name to keep in my head all the time, but that's the seminal work on this stuff. If you want to know how people are susceptible to, thought reform and how this all works and how to proof yourself up against it in the future, this is the stuff to learn about, as well as critical thinking. I'm just a total advocate for critical thinking because it's what allows me to see through what people are doing. I'm not into taking sides so much anymore. I'm a much more neutral, centrist kind of personality. And maybe too much so in some ways, but I'll take the devil's advocate position against almost any position these days. And I'll rather do that and have a friendly argument or discussion on issues than to just meekly, submit to what somebody else tells me is how the world works or what I should think, and I think that's a good place to be. I think having a skeptical attitude is having a healthy attitude. I've come to learn that our brains are not as logical and reasonable as we would like to think they are. We are very susceptible to nonsense. And it takes what I call active thinking to be able to deal with receiving information and being able to discern whether you're receiving propaganda or factual information. You can't just tell because of this, just because you can look at it and tell. It doesn't work that way. So educating yourself about that stuff is really, really helpful. And of course, before education is relationships, is having people to talk to, having a support system of some kind. I don't think anybody can do this alone. So finding a friendly voice, a friendly person to talk to, non-judgmental, that's priceless for cult recovery. So those are the two things I would say off the top of my head that are most important.
I love it. And there's learning to not get in another cult and not to be harmed by organizations again. But then there's how do I deal with my believing family and friends? How do I deal with all my believing relatives? How do I fill the holes that leaving my religion created in my life? The spiritual holes, the moral holes, the identity holes, the holes around meaning and purpose. How do I build community again? How do I make new friends? How do I construct a new life where I want to get out of bed and feel like I'm contributing? And if I don't believe in God anymore, how do I resolve that issue so that I don't feel like life is meaningless? Do you have resources? I mean, this is what I do for a living. So I'm asking all these questions because that's all I think about. Do you have resources for helping people do that sort of growth after a cult?
Well, yeah. One, maybe I didn't frame it properly, but all of the things I just said are fully applicable to everything you just asked.
Okay.
So, the thing about recovering from a cult is you have to recover yourself. And, I've done that mostly by myself. I've had a couple of sessions of counseling where I got to sort of talk, but mostly it's just been me talking to myself and working it out. And I think that comes from the education, because the thing about recovering from a cult is recovering to a place where you trust yourself,
right?
And you can make decisions for yourself, and you are okay with that. And maybe that's a place you've never been in your life. I'm a second gen. I know what it's like to grow up in these things, but it's still possible to come to that place and come to a place where you're the one who is determining what you do and don't want to think or believe. And dealing with other people who have belief is a skill. It is its own thing. It involves tolerance, right, and understanding and compassion. I think these things are learned from these materials also, because you understand how people, when you understand what mechanisms are used on people to get them to that place, in terms of behavior modification, thought reform, thought control, information control and stuff. When you understand how those structures work, then you can see them in other people's lives and you see what's influencing them. And you go, okay, I'm going to be able to go this far with this person, and I'm not going to take it any further because they're not ready for that yet. Or I can't talk about it at all with this person, so I want to have a relationship with them. So we're going to talk about other stuff, and it's going to be okay that we're going to do that for a while. That kind of thing. That's where I've gotten to with this stuff. I'm not trying to project myself onto everybody else. I can only talk from my own experiences, though, and that's what's worked for me. and being willing to make mistakes and own them, because I've made thousands of them. I've trusted people I shouldn't have trusted still. I don't have a microscope or an X-ray lens into their brain or their heart or anything like that. You just kind of have to go with it. But I don't rely on other people to tell me what to do or what to think. I receive input from everybody else in my environment, and I think about it, and I come to my own conclusions. And that's what critical thinking has given me, and skepticism has given me, which is why I'm such a proponent of those two things. Because I think a lot of things resolve when you get to a place where you trust yourself. And I trust myself in terms of my judgment. I don't second guess myself all the time. I question myself all the time, but I don't doubt myself, if you see the difference there. I can't hear you. These died. See if I can.
No, I muted myself when I coughed. I'm sorry. That was me. Can you hear me now, Chris? Chris is trying to figure it out. Okay. So to our listeners, what I want to do now, as soon as Chris can see me and get back on, I want to make sure Chris can promote his various assets and websites. Put your earphones back on. Put your earphones back on.
Oh.
I want to make sure that we can promote Chris's good work again. So definitely his YouTube channel is called Chris Shelton. That's an important way to get a hold of him. Also, his website, I'm pretty sure, is MN Critical Thinker. So let me pull that up. mncriticalthinking.com. That's another way to support Chris Shelton. And then, of course, Chris Shelton has a Patreon page that is also an important way to support him, patreon.com/Chris Shelton. So those are all ways that you can support Chris. Chris also has a book. The book is called Scientology A to Xenu. That's a way to support Chris. And I just want to make a specific appeal to my listeners in that, in Mormonism, we were trained to give 10% of our income to a church for eternity. And we were totally willing to do that. But then when we leave, put your headset back on. I muted myself for a sec. So we were conditioned by the Mormon Church to give 10% of our income in perpetuity forever. But at the same time, once we leave the church, even though we've really benefited from leaving the church and from those people who have helped us out, we sometimes, and there are a lot of people who are being supportive of me, but we sometimes just totally don't think about what we might need to do to pay it forward and how critical these resources are. So, Chris, I muted myself for a second.
And I misunderstood what was happening because I didn't hear anything.
So what I've been doing is plugging you and trying to tell people. I told them about your Patreon page. I told them about your book. I told them about your website.
Awesome. Thank you.
And your Patreon page. But I'm basically making an appeal for listeners to support you and me and Lloyd Evans and anyone. Like, if you don't want to give 10%, give 5%, give 1%, but pay forward. Realize that these resources don't come cheap. Someone like Chris is literally not taking health insurance. Sometimes these activists are on food stamps. So give to these organizations, give to Mormon Stories, give to Chris Shelton, give to Lloyd Evans, give to all the people that need the support to be able to carry on this work. So now that I've
thank you,
Chris, can you let people know any of your reactions to what I just said, basically.
No, thank you very much. I was just sitting here screwing around with headphones for a second. So thank you for plugging all of that. It's very true. And the work doesn't come free. I'm not really sure what else to say at this point. We've covered so much territory. This has been one of the most amazing online interview experiences I've ever had. I thank you for everything you're doing here and for giving me this platform and opportunity.
So did we go 4.5 hours today?
Yes, we did. We have been on for a long time.
You've officially broken the record for one interview series with an individual that was held by Roger Hendricks, where we went 10.5 hours. But I am absolutely going to have listeners who listen to every hour of my interview with you, and I'm going to make this offer right now. If any of my listeners who listen to every hour of my interview with Chris Shelton, number one, I'm going to ask you to donate $10 a month or more to Chris Shelton, at least for a year, to help him get by. But also what I'll do is I'll say this, that Chris Shelton, we need to bring you to Salt Lake City, and then we need to have a special private screening where we have dinner and a get-together. And anyone who's listened every hour of my interview with Chris Shelton, you get first dibs on my evening dinner with Chris Shelton when we bring you here to Salt Lake City. How does that sound?
That sounds awesome. I would love to do that.
All right, man. Well, Chris Shelton, we appreciate you. You take care and keep up the great work. And please take me up on my offer to help you make more money, because I want to help you make more money.
We will definitely be in touch. Thank you, John.
All right, Chris. And all my listeners, thanks for your support. If you don't donate or support Mormon Stories, donations are tax deductible. We're transparent in our finances, and all your donations go to keeping this podcast alive and towards promoting good people like Chris and all the other people we promoted. So please also support us. Go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, $10 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can afford. We promise that we'll take that money and just continue to help awaken people who are within Mormonism to what the truth of Mormonism is. For those who need to leave, we're going to help save marriages. We're going to help save lives. We're going to help continue providing tools to help people find health and happiness within or without Mormonism. And then, of course, we're with the Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis with Thrive, which is a for-profit, but we're in partnership and collaboration with Thrive. We're going to do all that we can to help people build happy and healthy lives afterwards. And again, if you're still listening and you want to come to Thrive Beyond Mormonism Conference, November 17th, please register. Go to thrivebeyondmormonism.com. It's $15. Even though we're calling, I said it's for-profit. Thrive is a loser event financially. We're going to lose thousands of dollars putting on Thrive. But because we priced it at $15 a person, we're doing it in the Salt Palace. It's going to cost $20,000 to put on Thrive at a minimum. And it all depends on how much we market it between now and then. Please come to Thrive. Please meet other post-Mormons. Please come hear some of the best speakers we can muster about how to build a healthy, happy life after Mormonism. And please consider starting a Thrive support group in your area where you can hold a little 10-person, 15-person support group for progressive and post-Mormons in your area. All that you can do at thrivebeyondmormonism.com. We have a marketing arrangement with thrivebeyondmormonism.com. They pay Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation a marketing fee, and then we help promote what they're doing. And our lawyers and accountants have said that's all legitimate. So, and Thrive is all a money loss. Thrive has only lost money. It will only continue to lose money. But it's an LLC for the convenience of the people that are underwriting it. So thanks to everyone for your support. Keep supporting us. Chris, keep doing great work. And we'll hope to see you back on Mormon Stories, and we'll hope to be in touch.